Hello, this is Werewolf the podcast, and we are with William Marshal and the Wyrm and the Werewolf, and they are angling for Wyrm. I'm afraid the sound quality from some of the mics isn't as good this week. We've had a couple die, we won't say how, and we're using the older one until a new one arrives tomorrow, but I thought I'd get this out and then I can replace the sound with a decent mic. So if you're listening to this when it sounds a bit shitty, I'm sorry, but it will be better next time, and I will change it so you can listen to it better if you want to. Having said that, you can give us some money so we can buy things like mics. If you go down to the description, there is a little thing there that says support the show, and you can send us some cash. And for all those people that have done that, it helps because these things happen. Anyway, love you loads. Rate us, describe us, share us, do stuff, because you're great and we love you. You're the best. And again, I'll shut up and let us get on with the story.
What? And then she says, "Oh no, my lord, I am just a poor handmaid. Do not take advantage of such as an innocent as I." Such an innocent maid behind. She knew exactly what to do with my lance, if you know what I mean. Polished it very well and slaked my weapon's thirst in her promised land. How does that sound to you, Welly, me young fellow, me laddie?
Percy bragged and slapped his thigh before he downed the last of his cup and sat back against the boulder we were using to hide us from the mouth of the cave, hands behind his head, in a pose of repose and smugness. That pose would have been well earned if the story was a truth. I don't doubt that it may be, but I doubt that it may be. Not a sensical or sensible sentence uttered there, but a truth of sorts nonetheless. Welly, my squire, looked upon Percy with something that resembled worship. Welly was like that, he was. A worshipper of things he thought worthy of worship. Apparently to him, the deflowering of young maids was a thing worth worshipping. It would take a lesson in chivalry from I to educate this young man. He would have it beat into him that he needs respect for women, not the use of them. That was the way of the night. I never bragged about my sordid side, because I had none. My first night of passion would be on the night of my wedding. Oh, don't get me wrong, I wanted women, of course I did. I dreamt of and considered them greatly, often with a lust that I would repent of during absolution. I loved women, but my faith kept me in check. My lack of belief in the truth of Percy's stories means I would never take him to task about them. I suppose if he was doing half the deeds he bragged about, then he would have to answer for those deeds with God.
Well, young Welly, have you ever dipped your wick in a woman?
Percy asked the young squire. The boy seemed confused. Gervais had to help him.
That's the way that Percy asks you if you've ever been with a woman,
he explained to the boy. Well, he still looked confused. He'd been with lots of girls and women. They were everywhere around the court, and he had 3 sisters at home. Gervais saw the boy's confusion and grimaced at the fact that he was so literal in his interpretation of the explanation.
Have you ever, been the beast with 2 backs with a woman or a girl? Or do you understand how women come to bear children? Do you not? Do you know how beasts make young, for instance?
He tried, making a circle with his left hand, thumb and index finger, and used the index finger of his right hand to act out the penetration of the circle. The realization was seen in Welly's colour change from pimple-covered pale to pimple-coloured red.
Oh, no, sir.
He paused and was in thought.
Nellie, Kennelman's daughter, well, she let me touch her breast once. Does that count?
Welly asked. Gervais was sharpening his blade as he made eye contact with me. We both quietly laughed at Percy and his story, and then at Welly and his attempt to fit in.
Well, it's a fine start, fine lad. It's a start, and now you're serving my retinue. Many a maiden will come to cover you. I warn you, you may become exhausted. Yes, my young fellow, my lad, many a young woman has crossed Percy's path only to offer their precious bounty to me. I often have no idea how I do it, you know. I think I have deflowered half the court in my time.
Well, he was sat open-mouthed, looking at Percy as though he was some great philosopher, although he may not have understood what Percy was saying. Gervais shook his head, looked at Percy, and begged a question of him.
Oh, and what was the handmaid's name you speak of, and which lady did she serve, Percy?
Well, he turned to Gervais, and then back to Percy for his delivery of incredible knowledge. Percy's body language faltered for a minute as he tried to manage this question in his head. Then he relaxed back against the rock. Percy was not the quickest of wit.
As you know, a gentleman never gives a lady's name. That would be unseemly, Gervais. Unseemly. In fact, I am disappointed in you for asking to be honest.
Percy replied. Gervais laughed.
Oh, of course, sorry,
he said.
Remember that, young welly. Never kiss and tell.
Percy told the boy as though this was good advice.
Aye, for it is true. If you share the names, they do not trust you and never give you access to their precious parts,
continued Percy. Gervais turned back to his sharpening and laughed to himself.
Yes, I thought so.
He said quietly to no one in particular, and then he turned to me, showing his lethargy and boredom at our task.
William, if we're to sit here on this dark autumn eve, can we not at least have a fire to warm us?
He asked me. I'm afraid not, my friend. We do not want the Wyrm to see us. We needed to take this bait without thought, I told him.
Aye, a worm.
He laughed.
Do we not both agree that Bishop and Count have lost their marbles, as it were? Dragons are not real. This is a ridiculous quest in my eyes.
The rest of his mutterings were just that, virtually inaudible to me. He loved to complain. He was one for the nicer things in life, see? Like a warm bed filled with warm bodies. Here, there had been no niceties. A cold stone bed was not his pleasure. He also hated the little demon flies that could circumvent his armor. Oh, how he moaned. But even if I got tired of such complaints, I was glad he was present. With these thoughts in mind, I smiled at the man. Suffering makes you stronger and have a gratitude for the wonders of our age, Gervais, I told him. He did not make eye contact, but showed his disquiet with a rude gesture, although he smiled. He moaned and protested, but I knew he would not rather be anywhere else this evening than sat before a cave that may contain a monster. If I had left him, he would never have forgiven me. The bull that we had on the end of a chain was asleep in front of the cave. We'd come up with this plan in a drunken moment. It seemed like it might work. We had a lure on our line. Around the neck of the beast was an anchor from a small boat. Yes, we hoped that this would act like a hook for fish. A hook for a dragon. Yes, I know it sounds like utter madness now, but you must remember we had no idea how to hunt dragon. We were hoping that what we did would work. The chain was attached to the bull and a huge boulder we hid behind. It was a massive and weighty chain attached to a massive and weighty rock. Our plan was that when the dragon took the bait, that it would be held out in the open where we could deal with it. It would be difficult for it to fight when it was hooked to the stone. It would not be able to maneuver or spit its venom. Well, that's what we hoped. But who knew in reality? But it was the best we could consider at the time. So here we sat for 6 days, waiting for the beast to take the bull. Frankly, I was getting to the point where I just wanted to head into the cave with my sword and shield and do the deed, or fail in it through sheer bloody boredom. Only my wolf soul, Fenrir, stopped me from doing so. He was a blessing, to be honest, with his advice. Without him, I would have died several times over following my own choices. This night, I had a feeling and sat and stared at the bull, willing the Wyrm to come and take it. Fenrir, my wolf soul, was also hiding. Normally, because of his lack of visibility, he would have been watching the creature, but in this case we knew that the monster could observe him, so he had to be hidden as well. So we sat together and had a mental chat about the outcome of the day. We were distracted by boredom and conversation. Silence reigned as we listened for any sign of the beast. Welly, my squire, was at this point keeping an eye on the mouth of the cave. I felt the fear roll off him. But I also took great cheer in the fact that the fear did not immobilize him or make him quail. The fear made him want to quell it. The only way for him to do that was to face that fear. A boy? Yes. He did not know his true age, something around 13 winters. But I saw a future strong man in that boy. A noble man. A worthy knight. Not much light had we to see by. Even the stars were hidden by the cloud that mottled the sky, but our eyes grew stronger and we could see more as they changed that lack of light. I know. An unfair advantage was mine as I had a wolf's eyes. My sight in the dark was as capable as in the light. I also had Fenrir's eyes. A separate entity was he. But I could see the world as easily through his eyes as I could see it through my own. I sat uncomfortably, with my back to the rock. Welly was on lookout, but really, it was Fenrir who was my eyes. It was not that I did not trust the boy. It was that I trusted the wolf to see what was true.
William,
Came into my mind from Fenrir.
there's movement back mouth at cave.
Percy and Gervais were snoring a little as they lay wrapped in blankets and furs. Gervais had complained at the lack of a fire and warm food, but he'd heartily drowned his sorrows in the wine I had brought. I was worried, though, because he had drunk a fortnight's worth in 6 days. I stealthily made my way to the sleeping figures, placed a finger on each of their lips, and shaking them awake, I shook my head as their eyes focused on mine, and then motioned to the mouth of the cave with my eyes only. Their eyes, in turn, went wide, and they were instantly awake. We had smoked our weapons so they did not glint in the light, the soot of the fire blackening the shiny steel. We had also laid our weapons on soft fabric so they would not be heard as we hefted them, which we now did. Preparing for what, though? We did not know, but this sort of preparation made us feel just that. A weapon in hand made us feel a little more ready for whatever God threw at us, a little more prepared for. Slowly and quietly, we took to our feet, and then to the boulder to look from our hiding spot to the cave mouth. Through my Fenrir's eyes, I could see 2 golden points moving towards the entrance of the cave. 2 golden points that must be eyes. The silence of the giant beast behind those eyes made my skin itch a little. How could such a behemoth be without sound? I knew that Wally, Gervais, and Percy could see naught at this moment, but I still made sure they held their tongues and focused on the direction that the dragon was coming from. It was moving faster towards us now, in loping bounds. Those eyes became clearer dots of light until the creature from the entrance of the catacomb. It was a large white rabbit. It sat now, as rabbits do, twitching its nose and cleaning its ears. Relief shot through my companions at the sight of it, I can assure you, and Percy laughed out loud as the tension fell away.
"Oh, Lord, forgive us. I don't know how to deal with this beast, William,"
mocked Gervais.
"It looks like it must best us all,"
he continued.
"Well, forward, my brave sir. Deal with the beast, and today you will win your spurs,"
laughed Gervais. We all joined him in his jest, and Wally, willing to be part of it, drew his dagger from its sheath and charged the mighty monster. Oh, I knew I would be a figure of fun, but I deserved it, to be honest. As we laughed and watched the boy chase the rabbit, I turned to look for the bull. Strange. Had it wandered a little after being disturbed from its slumber to take advantage of a grassy hillock nearby? No. Where had it got to? It was with shock that I noticed that it was not there. My search became a little desperate as I vetted every corner of the space before the cave. Very strange. No sight of it. It had yet to wander anywhere. It could not. The chain would have moved and held it. It was just gone. The pile of chain that we had laid by the boulder had not moved. It was very strange. If something took the bull, then that chain would be running as it was taken. "Where's the bull?" I said in my wolf soul's mind.
"I'm afraid it's been taken, William,"
said the soul. Taken by what? The bloody rabbit? I scoffed. Fenrir did not seem to notice my mocking tone. He just continued talking.
"No. Look at clearing very carefully. That's it. Aye. Aye. Squint your eyes a little, and you might see that it is full of,
Dragon! I finished his sentence. The beast was there. No. Beast is not enough. The gigantic monster was there, but somehow it was camouflaged. How could such a behemoth do that? It was as though I could see right through it, through the scales, the skin, and the body of the Wyrm. No wonder these giant creatures were rarely spotted if they had this kind of power to hide. It was something that they did at their own behest. It was satanic magic. Well, it had to be. It had to be some sort of magic to hide an animal like this from the entire world. Could just see the outline of the creature. It was four-legged, and massively folded wings hugged its body, which took up the entirety of the space before us. As the human half of the werewolf, you know that I have abilities and senses far beyond those of a normal person. Yes, I could definitely see it, especially out of the corner of my eye. But to mortal men, it would be invisible. Frightening what was hidden from the mere man's eyes. Welly cavorted around just in front of the beast's head, chasing the rabbit. Gervais and Percy laughed and shouted instructions to Welly. They warned him of the beast's teeth and evil eye. This was not good. I had been standing and staring for too long. The laughter and fun stopped as they sensed that something was amiss. They turned to me and started to become nervous.
Come, Will, what is it? You worry us, sir.
Percy asked. I could sense the nervousness in his tone. Percy started to try to get to his feet, but I gestured for him to sit down and be quiet without taking my eyes off the worm. It was so hard to focus on, and I did not want to lose it.
Will?
Gervais now had a tone of disquiet. I maintained my eye-watering stare. Wary was within its grasp, yet it just held itself solidly and silently, staring at the boy who was still laughing a little as he stumbled backwards. The rabbit he had chased had been the most sensible of all here and disappeared into the bushes. I now tried to talk to Welly without frightening him. Welly? Welly? Could you come here, please? I said. The boy seemed a little confused, but started to wander back to the rock, kicking at the pebbles and stones as he did so. His temperament was as though I had admonished him. Then the giant worm moved and became very apparent to all as it swallowed down the bull with a lifting of its head. Wary turned quickly and fell as he looked up at the monster's head as it shook down the mouthful. Yes, the bull, the weight of 7 fine men, was only a single mouthful for this beast. It was only now that the chain started to move and unravel as the beast swallowed the bull, drawing the iron-linked angling line into its stomach. Now all of us could see it, and what we saw was beyond measure. I had massively underestimated its size when I saw it through my Fenrir's eyes. It was the size of a ship of the sea, 100 feet long, yet agile and flexible. Its scaly hide glistened with the little light there was. It was horribly beautiful, horrifically beautiful. And now it looked down upon the boy, the terrified boy. I could not imagine the fear he must have felt, but his face did not betray it. He seemed at anger in this situation. "Oh, you brave boy, brave boy," said Fenrir. He knew I hated it when he cursed, but it was incredibly appropriate in this case. We had bitten off a lot more than I could chew with this plan of mine. That creature was... It was so ridiculously massive. I shook my head and tried to think. The pressure of the situation not allowing these to be clear thoughts.
You can see it? I mean, all of it? What do we do, Will?
Whispered Percy. I heard the fear in his voice, but I did not judge him for that. This thing was worthy of fear. I needed to think, so I tried to quiet him, shaking my head and holding my fingers to my lips, the sign language of a mother telling her child to fall into silence. The beast's head turned in our direction, leaving the once prone boy to scramble away. It snorted through its nostrils as large as my head. This seemed some sort of expression of its indifference to the situation. It seemed bored by Welly, and its focus of interest changed. To us. Percy was lost in the moment and the magnificence of the worm.
You can see it, Will,
he shouted. Yes, Percy, I answered calmly. Yes, Percy, I can see it. And it has heard you. It is now staring at me and I have no idea what to do. It would have been amusing to watch this conversation if you were a mere observer as I tried to speak without moving my lips, body, eyelids, or bloody anything.
I'm sorry,
said Percy, now realizing what he had done. His apology would not change this situation. I'd like to say that all is good, Percy. I'd like to say that. But it's not good, Percy. It's not good at all. It's far from good. It's really very far from good. And I have no idea what to do at this point. I tell you, I'm really quite flummoxed at this, I am.
What's it doing?
Whispered Gervais from his hiding place behind his rock. I winced at this. The worm could hear him. It is staring at me, Gervais.
What the
started Fenrir.
Hello, hello, over here, Mr. Dragon. Cooey!
He shouted at the beast. This was probably the bravest thing that Percy had ever done. I don't think that Percy would have thought himself ever capable of doing something like this, never mind me. Gervais quickly followed him. He had no idea why or what he was doing, but he stood. He followed Percy's lead and he stood up to attract the beast's attention. And you know what? It worked, it did. It turned its focus from me to the two men who had suddenly become visible. Percy, now realizing that he had done something beyond brave, tried to drop down behind the rock, but Gervais grabbed his collar and brought him to his feet again to face the thing.
What do we do now, William?
Asked Gervais. My mind reeled at this. I had no idea. This was a very unusual set of circumstances. Not a set of circumstances that I had come across before. It was incredibly heartwarming that they thought I had the answer, but in reality I did not. I turned to the wolf soul with his thousands of years of experience and life. I looked at him for guidance, and just got a wolfy shrug. He had no idea what to do either.
You could try and bloody pray if they want,
he said after a few moments of consideration. The creature turned towards the two now shouting and gesticulating men and started moving towards them, slowly. The chain, piled by the stone, began to pay out as it did so. I did the only thing I could think to do. I grabbed that chain and I looped it around the boulder and shouted for all to run, run, run. I know, it was not the bravest action of a night, but I'd greatly underestimated the worm and would willingly give my life for those of my friends. As the men increased their pace, so did the dragon. It started to chase them down. They would never outrun it. The monster's walk was at the pace of a running man. I thought all was lost. Then, suddenly, the chain went taut and pulled at the mouth of it. It took a while for the giant beast to slow down, and because of this, its head was jerked back and around to see me at the boulder holding the chain. I was holding the source of its discomfort. I was. Merde. The tight chain wrenched at the anchor in its belly and caused it pain. More merde. The angling of the worm had worked to a degree. At least my friends had gotten away. Well, at this moment, they'd gotten away anyway. Hopefully they would get back to tell others about this moment and the real size of the thing that we had faced. The monster pulled and shook the chain lashed around the rock, trying to free itself. Its entire focus was given to wrenching itself free. I reveled in its moment of pain when it pulled. The anchor was doing its job, ripping into the guts, or the beast's equivalents. It felt good to hurt it. It may very well be my last deed. Then, the dragon stopped pulling. It relaxed and seemed to consider what was happening. pulling only gave it pain. So it needed to do something different. I, the fool that I am, took this as my opportunity and leapt. I landed squarely on the creature's muzzle, and lifting my now drawn sword, I stabbed down between its eyes with every ounce of power that both Fenrir and I possessed. Werewolf soul and apex knight combined our strength to pierce that monster's brow. Every muscle and sinew was taut as we struck. We would drive this blade through the very rock of the earth to cause the damage that was needed if that was what we had to do. I screamed my hatred as I drove the tip home. This was a death blow. The point struck and then stopped dead, jarring my hands and arms that slipped from the hilt, numbness at the shock taking them. The weight and momentum that I expected to be driving into the beast's skull threw me backwards from the giant head, and I landed on my back directly beneath its maw.
More murd,
said the wolf soul. There was a pause in the action. The beast and I became still as we both considered our options. I could see my sword stuck in the beast's head. It was not deep, and it had only partially shattered one scale. No real damage seemed to have been done. I lay there staring at the blade sticking out of its skull. This was stupid. How on earth had anyone ever killed one of these things? What had St. George been? This was impossible. Those red eyes were staring at me now. They were pupilless and very bright. They were the size of a helm and faceted like well-cut jewels. They were not like the eyes of any other beast, but I knew that they stared intensely at me. I could see 100 reflections of myself in those orbs. Then, its ruby-red eyes crossed for a moment as it tried to look at the thing stuck in its forehead. I don't know why, but this seemed very amusing to me, and I smirked. What would be the eyebrows of other faces seemed to rise as the creature looked at my sword. And then those eyes returned to me. A claw as big as myself was lifted above me. I expected it to slam down and impale me into the soil where I lay. But no. It continued towards the creature's brow and wiped the sword away as though it were nothing more than a splinter. I tried to move away, but immediately the head swung back to me. Its mouth opened. I could have taken a horse and wagon through that mouth and down that throat. Teeth longer than a double-handed sword lined its jaws. A snake's tongue forked and flickered, tasting the air, moving around in that cave-like maw. It seemed death was certain, a death which I thoroughly deserved. Fenrir offered his aid. Become the wolf or werewolf and run or fight. I thanked him, but said no. It was my time. And to die in this manner was not a bad way to leave this plane. I simply awaited my death. Calmly. Strangely, the beast started to shake and shiver. It racked and hacked, and I realized it was trying to bring up the swallowed bull on its linked hook-like anchor. With one last almighty heave, the monster covered me in its saliva and spittle, and the corpse of the now dead bull, chain and anchor, landed on top of me. For a moment I was blinded by the stomach contents, My skin burned where its acidic nature touched me, and I tried to wipe my eyes clear due to the pain there. I rolled in the grass to clear the mess that clung to me. It stuck to me, and it took some time before I could even consider the worm again. Eventually, my vision returned. I lay on the ground, and I looked up to meet only the stars. The stars that sparkled down upon me in my dragon vomit bath. It had gone. I knew not why, and I knew not where, and I shivered as I realized I knew not when the dragon would return.